This is Mr. Gillum, and today we're going to be talking about the distance between points. This is in your instruction book on page 134. We're going to take a look at this coordinate plane. It says that the coordinate plane below represents where Jenna's friends live. Jenna's apartment is at point J. Okay, that makes sense. Jenna, J. Zach's house is at point Z. Z for Zach. Okay, that makes sense too. Each unit on this coordinate plane represents one block. How many blocks does Jenna need to walk to get to Zach's house? So here's where Jenna is. She is at her own house. Here's Zach. That's where he's at. We need to know how far it is from J to Z. Okay, that is our goal. That's what we're trying to figure out. It says that we can just count how many units it is to figure out how far it is from J to Z. And we can do that only when they're on the same line. So since they're all on the same line there, it's a straight line, we can count how far apart they are. We could also count how far apart J is from N or S just by counting on the number line because it's straight across. We could count how far Z and R are from one another. Unfortunately, we cannot count how far R is from D. It's hard for us to tell how long each of these spaces is in between each of these rectangles to get from R to D. And so we can only count using the number line if they're lined up vertically or horizontally in a straight line across, not diagonally, or a straight line up and down, but not diagonally. So when we're using our coordinate plane as a reference, we can count, and that's fine, but we can only do that if they're straight across from one another or straight up and down from one another. No diagonals whatsoever. Okay, so if I wanted to answer this question just by counting, I could say, okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, in this example, I only had to count 10 spaces, but in a lot of ways, things aren't always just 10 away from one another. In the real world, there's things that are way far away from one another. And so there are other strategies to decide how far apart things are. So we believe they are 10 blocks apart. If I just counted, they're 10 blocks apart. So we can also use the absolute value to think about this problem. So if I think about 0 as being my reference point and how far away things are from 0, that'll help me to solve this problem more quickly. Okay, I know that J is 4 units because it's at the coordinate 4. It's 4 units to get to 0. I know Z is, because it's at -6, it's hard to see that, I know it's 6 units away from 0. And so instead of counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I can think, okay, well, I know 0 is my reference point, and I know how far things are from 0 because it's literally whatever the number is. That's called its absolute value. It's magnitude sometimes we call it. It's distance from 0. So J is 4 from 0 and Z is 6 from 0 in the other direction. So altogether the amount of space in between would be 6 plus 4, which would equal 10 blocks. And that's the approach I always take when I think about things because I don't have time to draw a number line and count by ones to figure out how far away I am. It's represented like this. We could think about it as the absolute value of 4 or the distance from 0 of J. This is for J. And then the distance of 0 from 0 for Z. And we would know that J is 4 away, Z is 6 away in the other direction. So 4 plus 6 would make 10. So they're 10 blocks away. It says, look at the first model. Count the units from -5, 4 to -5, -6. So -5, 4, that's him, to -5, -6, that's him. And we did that already. We counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We can do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, or the absolute value of 4. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or the absolute value of -6, because it's at -6. And that's how far that would be from there to there. And that's how far that would be from there to there. So we can count and we can get to 10. Okay. I can literally just count. That's what it says. 10 blocks. You can count on the y coordinates from 4 to -6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Visually, you can see that it is 10. Jenna's friend Sam lives at point S. Explain how to count units to find the distance between Jenna and Sam's apartments. Well, if I'm just counting says how to count. You just count until you get there. You can count straight across. Because Jenna and Sam are straight across from one another, I can count how many units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or we could think of that as the absolute value of -5 because we're at -5 here. And then 6, 7, 8, which would really be the absolute value of 3, that distance. So altogether we would have 8 blocks. 8 blocks that way as well. However you'd like to prefer to do it. So really you just, both points have the same y coordinate, so you just count the number between x coordinates. So if you thought about s as being 3, 4, and as j as being -5, 4, we would just have to count from -5 to 3 since our y coordinates are the same. And there's a distance of 8 there. It says look at the second model. What do the distances, or what distances do the absolute value of 4 and absolute value of -6 represent? Well, the absolute value of 4 represents the distance from j to the x-axis, or from 4 to 0. And the absolute value of -6 represents the distance of z to 0, or z to the x-axis. Yeah, they're referring to the x-axis rather than 0, but it really is an absolute value problem. It's a distance problem. It says explain how to find the distance between points j and z using absolute value. So I know that the distance here can be represented as the absolute value of 4 because j is 4 high. I can know that the distance from here to here is 6 because the absolute value of 6, or the distance of -6 from the x-axis, is 6. So I know that the total distance would be 6 plus 4. That would make 10 altogether. So we could add the absolute values together. So explain how to use absolute value to find the distance between the 2 points with the same x-coordinate that lie on opposite sides of the x-axis. Okay, so with the same x-coordinate would mean vertical. They would have the same vertical. So numbers, this would have the same x-coordinate as this one, because on all of them we had to move back -5. So this would be -5 something, -5 something, -5 something. So those all have the same x-coordinate. So we're talking about like in a vertical line, how would we find the distance? And in order to do that, we would find the absolute value of each one that represents how far it is from the x-axis, and then we would add those together. Add the absolute values of the y-coordinates. So in this case, if I wanted to find the distance between j and z, again, I would just find, this would be 4, this would be -6. The absolute value of 4 plus the absolute value of -6 would equal 10, because 4 plus 6 equals 10. Okay. It says explain how to find the distance between points j and s using absolute value. Okay, so points j and s were this guy and this guy. Kind of already talked about this, but that's okay. In this case, we're talking about the y-axis, the distance from the y-axis. So these coordinates both have the same y values because they're on the same horizontal line. So they're both at 4 for the y values. Because they're on opposite sides of the y-axis, they'll have different distances from 0. So this would only work if they're on opposite sides of the axis. Okay. This is at 3. This guy is at -4. I know that there's going to be confusion about how you add those numbers together, but we really don't need to. We just need to think about how far they both are from the y-axis, and that's going to be our reference point, kind of like 0. So if I wanted to figure this out, I could find the absolute value. I should just write it here. The absolute value of -4, that represents the distance that j is from the y-axis, and the absolute value of 3, that represents 3. That's how far it is from the y-axis to s. That is a total distance of 7. 4 plus 3 equals 7. And that's how we could use absolute value to determine the distance between j and s. We could find the absolute value of each x-coordinate. J is 5 from the y-axis, s is 3. Altogether, they are 5 plus 3 away, or 8 blocks away from one another. It looks like I should have put a 5 here. Sorry about that. Slight modification. That was at -5 4. So it should be the absolute value of -5, 5. So really we have 5 plus 3. And that equals 8. Okay. Slight boo-boo there. Make sure you get that correct. And I hope you were writing in pencil. My bad. My bad, everybody. Okay. So yes. So we found the absolute value of each x-coordinate. J is 5 from the y-axis. S is 3. Altogether, that makes it 8, a distance of 8 altogether. So that's it for today. We're talking about how to find distance between 2 points. We can only do that if they're perfectly vertically aligned or perfectly horizontally aligned.